Hey guys, it's Sherry here today with a guest who might not need an introduction. We all know him as Tony Martignetti from the nonprofit radio show and uh, also his Plan Giving Accelerator, which he's going to talk about today. But I guess if you've been around the nonprofit sector for any length of time, Tony is a presence. I followed Tony closely, actually, and followed his podcast for years before I maybe had the guts to reach out to him. And I went online and I said, "Hey, I have some things to say. Can I be on your show?" So I'm actually anxious to flip the tables and interview Tony today. But Tony has been starting and growing Plan Giving program since '97. This is his 25th anniversary year. That's amazing. Um, and now he leads this amazing community that I've actually had the honor and privilege and enjoyment of coming to that class. It's a planned giving accelerator, which is a community of 1,000 plus nonprofit leaders who really want to integrate planned giving into their revenue and into their organization's future plans. So the first time I was on Tony's show, here's what I want to say, which is why also maybe I have a little soft spot in my heart for today and speaking with Tony. I was on his show in 2019 when the world was different, but I got one of my favorite clients from that show. One of my favorite clients, still to this day. A gentleman heard the show, obviously on the East Coast, but he's here in Chicago, and I always associate that client with Tony. And that client not only was a great fundraiser, but he added 7 figures of revenue to his bottom line in 18 months. So he was a good student. And so, Tony, thank you for letting me be on your podcast and having that client find me. But it's so good to have you on today.
Thank you, Sherry, and especially for that very gracious introduction. Very thoughtful.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you.
So, Tony, one of the fun things of having people that I've known for years then on my show is reading their bios and being like, what? Wait, I didn't know that, and all those fun things. So, tell me, like you're speaking, you're consulting, you have the radio show, you're the accelerator. Um, how did this come to be? I guess I just love hearing how like maybe even your previous career and your life's journey really has landed you in this position, and how it's just kind of this amazing combination of skills that has you doing what you're doing today.
It started with hating the practice of law. I've always been very glad that I went to law school, so glad that I have a law degree, but I hated practicing law, and I could only stomach it for 2 long years in New York City. And I then re-engineered myself into planned giving consulting. There's a legal element to it, although you
Right.
don't have to be a lawyer by any means to be successful in planned giving. That's one of the myths I think you may want to talk about, is that you have to have a lawyer or be a lawyer or know a lawyer or like lawyers. None of those things are true to be successful in planned giving. But it helped me, as I said, re-engineer myself into planned giving consulting, and that's when I started as a director of planned giving. So I've been on the front lines as a frontline fundraiser at 2 colleges. The first was, I'll give them a shout out. The first one was Iona College, which is now Iona University in New Rochelle, and then I moved to that's New Rochelle, New York. Then I moved to St. John's University in Queens, New York, and was the director of planned giving there. And in both those places, I launched the planned giving programs, and I just saw that I have a love for doing that, for expanding planned giving throughout the country. And I know, and I've over 25 years refined how to launch planned giving programs.
Yeah. And okay, so when we're thinking 25 years, I mean, what's the biggest change that's occurred? I mean, I'm sure the core principles are the same, but like, what's the nostalgic, like, oh, well, back in the day, we used to do it like this, and now we just do it like this. Like, has it changed that much?
Well, what's changed is me. I've gotten smarter. I back in the day, as you say, I was building programs that were bigger than they needed to be
Hmm.
in the beginning. And I've come to realize that by focusing on a specific gift, gifts by will, you'll have a much more successful, much easier launch of planned giving. And then in later years, if you want to go beyond that to the remainder trusts and the gift annuities and the life insurance, of course, those are all valuable gifts. But in the launching couple of years, focus is much better. So I'm the one who's changed over the years.
I love that. I could probably say the same thing about my business. Okay, so you brought up one of my questions just by answering that, which is help me with the vocabulary of all of this. I think that some of my clients are afraid to take this on, or it feels a little more mysterious than it should be because of like all the things you just said, gifts by will, annuity. Like, can you give us a vocabulary lesson, Tony, on how we should be talking about this to our clients, but also maybe like, here's the difference in a lot of those things that you just said.
The vocabulary list is very short.
Okay, good.
You don't need to learn a whole new language. Let's start with charitable remainder unit trust with net makeup provision. No, I'm kidding. We're not. That's what. Exactly. That's what.
I'm like, wait. Now I need a lesson.
Video, because I want people to see your face. Yes, that's what planned
I
giving
will.
Isn't. In year 15, you can deal with charitable remainder unit trust with net makeup provisions, if you want to. You don't even ever have to do that. We're starting with gifts by will. So interchangeable with gift by will is the phrase charitable bequest. These both mean the same thing. They mean that alongside your committed donor's husband, wife, children, grandchildren, other loved ones, there's a gift for your nonprofit in their will. And that's quite a position to be alongside the donor's husband, wife, etc. Right? We're starting with gifts by will, charitable bequests, and it's so simple for three reasons. Everybody knows what a will is. Everybody knows they need a will.
Yeah.
And everybody knows how wills work.
Yeah.
Therefore, you don't have to educate your staff about charitable remainder unit trusts with net makeup provisions, and you don't have to educate your donors.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows what it is, everybody knows they need one, and everybody knows how they work.
Makes total sense.
I feel like that's a complete dictionary of. You asked for a vocabulary,
Yeah, but that's the most important.
That's the dictionary. Charitable bequests. That's
right.
Where we're going to launch Planned Giving. And you mentioned Planned Giving Accelerator. That's what I teach in Planned Giving Accelerator. Step by step, guiding folks how to launch in this simple, accessible way.
I think that's the message I always hear from you. And it's always a good reminder that this is actually a little simpler than we make it. I think there's maybe a lot of misconceptions about planned giving. You brought up one of them being, oh, gee, we got to get the lawyers involved, or I need to, be savvy and with a certain skill set. But what are those other misconceptions you run up against every day that you're like, no, that's not what this is?
Another very popular one is that planned giving is going to hurt our other fundraising.
Yeah.
And the reality is actually completely contrary to that. Planned giving helps, adds to other fundraising.
Yeah.
I've seen it over 25 years, and you don't just have to take my 25 years of anecdotes. There's quantitative research from Professor Russell James at Texas Tech University. He studied this, and he found that I think it's 72% of people who include a charity in their will increase their other types of giving to that charity. And the reason for that is something I think very basic and very human, which I love, is that when someone has put your organization in their will, they have put them alongside their husband, their wife, their children, and their grandchildren. They love the organization and its work, its mission, its values that much.
Yeah.
So they feel so much closer now that they've taken this step, and they increase their other forms of giving.
Tony, I will admit I was one of those people, because I'm general ops, annual fund, most of the day.
Yeah.
I probably early on would have thought that. I thought, no, we got to get the annual gift in first, because it's gonna people are gonna trade out their gift, if you will. You've really helped me see that's not the case, and I've seen that actually play out, that affinity and that kind of linking of arms to say we're with you long term actually is a real asset, a real strength, and a great part of the donor experience. So I even thought that for many years.
I understand. It's a common misconception, and part of what I do is bust these insidious myths around planned giving.
One other question I'll ask you is, I think oftentimes what I hear is this, like, I think we're in their will, or they said something one time. We don't know if it's 10K or 10 million. And this kind of, we'll see in, 10 to 50 years. What's your stance or approach in having those conversations to, like, should a leader, know for certain that their organization is in the will, B, know the amount, or is it always kind of a mystery? I know there's going to be the surprise gift, everyone, it would be my guess, but in your world, what would be ideal?
This, Sherry, leads to another of the serious misconceptions about planned giving, that it's a conversation about death. So people don't want to have the conversation that you're asking about. Well, the donor said something 10 years ago. There's a note in our CRM database, so we'll just leave it at that. She glancingly said, "I'm thinking about putting you in my will." So we'll just leave it there from 10 years ago and hope for the best. That's a serious mistake. It's a conversation about life. The life of your nonprofit, the sustainability of your nonprofit, and how important long-term gifts in people's wills are, so that your mission, your values, and your work continue, are sustainable long-term into the future. So you want to have the conversation with that person who you suspect may have included you in their will. An easy way to do that is say, we're focusing on long-term gifts, and there's a mention that's, several years ago you were interested in, or that you said you might, or whatever the case is. And we're following up. Now, if you have a good relationship with the person, that might be a phone call. If you don't really know the person well, that would probably be better done by letter. You don't want to just be picking up the phone and opening conversations about people's long-term plans. So a letter, if the person is not known to the organization well, but you don't want to leave those things to chance and to hope. And again, the conversation is about the sustainability of your work. People who include you in their will are long-term loyal supporters. When you're talking to those folks, and they're roughly 55 to 60 and over, they're ready to have a conversation like this about the long-term future of your nonprofit.
That reframe on, like, maybe they want to have a conversation about it. Maybe we're the ones that are actually avoiding the conversation. Like, it actually would be great if both parties had a conversation about it.
Especially in the case that you rose, that's a case of bad stewardship. If 10 years ago the woman made a glancing reference and it was never followed up on, that's a big stewardship mistake, but not uncorrectable. And let's correct it as soon as possible and open the conversation.
Right. One topic that's come up when I have came and spoke to your accelerator was this concept of having investment level conversations with your donors, which is what I do all day long, of coaching people to sit down one-on-one with someone and be having those conversations that maybe we think are tough or difficult, or like, oh, don't ask me the money, questions. And sitting down and saying, no, actually, this is the financial story of the organization. And we want people to know that their gifts are, changing lives, and the impact and the results that are coming from that gift. I would imagine that organizations who are in a regular cadence of investment level conversations, of major gifts work, of true solicitations, not at events and appeals, that this might be a little, I'm going to do air quotes, easier, because I don't think any sort of fundraising is easy. But to be in that conversational cadence, and to be comfortable from an annual fund perspective of soliciting donors and kind of leading them to these conversations, I have to think that part of the puzzle makes plan giving a little more natural, or a little bit allows you to flow into those conversations in a little easier way.
Absolutely does. Yes. Your donors are comfortable having the serious conversations that you want fundraisers to have and CEOs to have with the donors at those levels. And in addition, planned giving is ideal for your smaller donors. And I know a lot of people like to say modest donors. Look, I'm not commenting on the people's character.
Right.
They're not small people.
Don't take offense. Don't send emails.
If you prefer to say they're modest donors, that's fine. I call them small donors. They make small gifts. Planned giving is ideal for those folks, and there are so many more of them than there are your major donors, of course. It's ideal because they can make their ultimate gift and not have a lifetime cost. They can make their ultimate gift to your work through their will. And that's a comfort to a lot of people.
Right.
If they can do an investment level gift, but for them, it needs to be in their estate plan, in their will.
Yes. So this brings up, let's talk a little bit about this accelerator. I'm intrigued by it. I'd love for you just to talk through maybe your methodology, or like how you've boiled your 25 years of expertise into this. And maybe in that, I'd be curious to know, like, what size organization, or is there any size organization that's too small to start a plan giving program? Or like, just kind of frame that up on who's the ideal person to be not only having a plan giving program, but also maybe thinking about your accelerator.
Sherry, I bring in a couple of outside speakers in the 3-month accelerator course, and you're always the highest ranked.
Oh,
I think you get a lot of LinkedIn followers from the accelerator.
Thank you.
People comment the most highly, because I survey throughout the course a couple times. You're always the most highly rated outside guest speaker that I bring, because you have that. What people really resonates with people is something you haven't mentioned about your work yet, that you encourage them to be authentic. Come as yourself, not as what you think a fundraiser should be sounding like, thinking like, where they should be meeting, etc. Yeah. Come as your authentic, honest self. That really resonates with people.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
In your work, yes, absolutely. The ideal for the accelerator and for plan giving generally, let's say, start plan giving generally, I like to see at least 5 years of history in the organization, so that donors are going to feel comfortable that your organization is going to survive them, right? When they put a gift in their will to you, they need to be confident that your organization is going to outlive them. It's part of the deal.
Makes sense.
So I like to see at least 5 years, and something more than just like the founder and maybe 1 employee or 2 employees. There needs to be some more depth to the organization. It doesn't have to be enormous. I'm saying more than the founder, or 1 or 2, plus 1 or 2. Because again, we want donors to feel confident that the organization is going to survive them. And while there may be a great deal of passion and zeal and good feelings about the work, donors need to,
Reality is, yeah,
yeah, the reality is donors need to be confident beyond just passion and good feelings.
right.
So that's really all I'm looking for. 5 years of history and more than the founder plus one or two folks as employees. And if an organization has got that and they're not doing planned giving, then they could be. The only other thing I would look at is, you do need to have individual donors. Sherry, I know a lot of your work is getting folks off the treadmill or the spin cycle. I used the wrong metaphor. Pardon me.
No, you're good. I'll take either.
Well, I guess treadmill spin, but I always think when you say the spin cycle, I always think of the washer. Let's move folks off the spin cycle, get them into the dryer, where things heat up. Right, fundraising heats up in the dryer.
Yes, or the delicate cycle.
Right, that's right. So you need to be not only event driven,
yes,
and not only, let's say, government funded, because you have to have individual donors for there to be prospects for your planned giving program.
Right.
So those are the things I look for in planned giving generally. If someone just emails me off the cuff and asks if they're ready for planned giving, I'm going to recommend that they evaluate, where they stand historically, staffing, and revenue funding wise.
Yeah.
Same thing with the accelerator.
Makes sense. So what is that? Can you, without giving away your trade secrets, what are the types of things? Like, are there very practical things in the accelerator of like, here's what that letter looks like. Here's what that, what are the maybe top 3 things people are taking away from the accelerator?
The first is probably the peer-to-peer learning. It's just every class. We've had 4 classes so far. The 5th class starts in early March. Every class has just knocked me over with how the group comes together, how they help each other, how they talk about things that they can't talk about with their vice president or their CEO or their board. The peer-to-peer learning, like the support, and people keep in touch afterwards. And I'm working on an alumni network to make that more formal. I'm not there yet, but I want to do that in 2023. But even informally, folks are keeping in touch. I know they are because they email and tell me. So that peer-to-peer learning is just, and support, knowing that there are other folks similarly situated, just like you, struggling, and learning together, helping each other, celebrating each other's victories. That's my synesthesia is kicking in now. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the goosebumps that I get when I'm with the classes. Beyond that, resources. I give you template letters and checklists and PowerPoint presentation for your board, and explain how to talk about planned giving to your board. Some of the accelerator classes, folks have even practiced their planned giving meeting with their board.
Great.
And there's no friendlier group to practice in front of than your fellow members in your class who so that you're getting genuine, honest feedback. So that's, that goes back to the peer-to-peer support and learning. But yeah, all those resources I share. We meet for once a week for an hour in a meeting format, not a webinar format, meeting format.
Yeah.
So people just blurt out their questions. Look, I'm from New York. You can't offend me. Interrupt me with your questions. And then there's always, plenty of time for crosstalk at the end as well.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a thumbnail of.
I love it. And Dart, can you tell a story of has someone gotten? I'm not going to say a giant gift. I mean, because I really what I'm hearing today is all size plan gifts are important. Tell me about the success people are getting. I mean, I'm sure they're making their money back quickly.
Exponentially.
Yeah.
In one case, this is a small humane society in Georgia, and in that case it was the CEO of the Humane Society that joined the accelerator, and she's had over $4 million in commitments from the
What?
work she did during and after the accelerator. And a lot of folks don't even do the work during the accelerator. They're learning and then they're going to apply it
Yeah.
later on, which is absolutely fine. I don't assign homework. You don't have to show up to the next week's class with something having been done. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. But she chose to do some work while we were learning, and then she's continued it, of course. Yeah, $4.2 million to date. Small Humane Society.
That's incredible.
In rural Georgia. Another woman took the lessons that we talked about meeting your board and talking about planned giving. She had 5 board members stand up and say either they've already included the organization in their will, but they've never been asked, or that they would include the organization in their will. Right in the board meeting, not in the important follow-up, which we talk about in the accelerator also, the follow-up strategy for the board. But in the meeting, 5 people stood up, said they've already done it or they would. Other people, there's another Humane Society, over $400,000. That one is
Awesome.
not too far from you, suburban Chicago.
Cool.
So the results.
Wow.
There's another guy who was soliciting a planned gift. He got the gift by will, and then in that same conversation, he got a $65,000 outright gift. The person
Now
wanted
you're
to
speaking my language on that.
refund. Yeah. So yeah, you and me. That was like you and I were together with
Yeah.
the donor and that fundraiser.
Let's do that.
He got a 5-figure outright gift and a planned gift from the same conversation. So
That's incredible.
yeah, the value, it's so gratifying.
Because people are waiting. Yeah, like they're
Value is
waiting for you
there.
to ask. It's right there.
Yeah.
They're waiting for you to
Yeah.
ask.
Sherry, you're absolutely right. When you're talking to the right folks,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot of what we talk about in the accelerator too, identifying those right prospects.
Right.
When you're talking to the right folks, they are ready. They are
Yeah.
ready for the conversation. Does everybody say yes? Of course not. But you honor them. You honor their loyalty, their commitment over so many years of giving by opening the conversation with them.
Love
And
it.
talking
Okay.
about the life, the sustainability of your
Right.
nonprofit.
Okay. Couple practical questions here that I hear from my clients. One being, okay, if somebody gave a gift to the endowment years ago, maybe, and I'll use an actual example. My client has a $10 million goal for their endowment. They're at 6. Somebody, gave $1 million years ago. Can they go back to them? That's the question on the table right now that they're wrestling with. What advice would you give them?
So I want to make sure I understand. The person gave $1 million outright gift
Yes.
to the $10 million campaign.
Yes. And they want to go
Can we
back to them
them. Pardon me?
for another gift.
Right. Can we go back to them now to talk about a planned gift, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're highly invested in the organization.
Right.
They're the type of donor that absolutely I would open up a conversation about. Maybe it's endowing the program that they gave the $1 million to, without
Right.
knowing what they gave to, or if they gave to something capital. Maybe they'll endow. Maybe we talk about a maintenance endowment for the building that they gave $1 million to, if it was a building and not a program. But whatever the specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah, those types of donors, they're ideal prospects for
To go back
a
to.
planned gift.
And then could you talk a little bit more? You brought up the follow-up. And I think this is critical. And in my world, I always say that, like the thanking, the impact reporting, sharing what your gift is doing, to me, that bar is too low. And I think it's too low because oftentimes to me, that is setting the tone for the next gift and setting the tone for how do we lead them to that annual gift. How do we exceed their expectations so they're like, of course I would give again. Could you talk a little bit about just that follow-up and staying in contact with people? Hopefully we're also giving annually, but sometimes I hear my clients say, I don't know how to keep, people who have made, gifts by will or just they've indicated that they will be getting something in the future. How do we keep them warm? What does that look like? Does it look any different, frankly, than what everybody else is getting?
I like to start with a recognition society
Mm.
for your planned giving donors. You have recognition societies at different outright levels, right? Depending on
Yeah.
your organization, they might start at $50 or they might start at $1,000. Whatever the thresholds are, it doesn't matter. Your planned giving donors who make that commitment, they deserve a recognition group
Yeah.
also. Name it something. I like to see something unique, iconic to the organization. Let's avoid the Heritage Circle, the Legacy Fund, Legacy Circle Society. Something unique.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, a quick one. The year you were founded, the 1987 Society.
Cool.
That's something every organization has. Every organization has a year of founding.
Yeah.
Something iconic to your organization. And then, it's the stewardship is really quite simple. If you just treat people with respect, keep in touch with them. I like to track birthdays and then remember the birthdays. Don't just ask on a survey, or you might have a little form, a non-binding form that folks fill out optionally to tell you about the gift in their will. You might ask their birthday. Well, if you're gonna ask the birthday, then you have to remember the birthday.
Yeah, do something.
Otherwise, you're making a big mistake. So remembering birthdays with a phone call. I love to pick up the phone and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not comfortable with a phone call, although a happy birthday phone call is pretty easy. That's a pretty easy call to make.
Yeah.
A handwritten note, a card, things like that. Maybe more institutional might be some insider donor communications. If you have a level of digital communications or print that you give to your major donors, why not include your planned giving donors on that? Probably a marginal cost of producing another 15 or 20 of these, if it's print publications, when you have that many folks in your planned giving recognition society. But even in the beginning, when you've got 4 or 5 or 6 folks, include them in those insider communications. Another quick one: you're hosting an event, have a little VIP section for your planned giving donors.
Love it. Love it.
Doesn't cost you anything. You're already hosting the event.
Right.
Set aside a VIP table or 2 for your planned giving donors.
And sometimes just the invitation, whether they come or not, sometimes just the invitation to be like, oh, that felt nice.
So savvy,
is enough.
Absolutely. Very savvy. Yes. If your organization is in California and the donor is in Wisconsin, invite them to your event.
Yes.
The thoughtfulness of the invitation means that you are remembering the person. It's a significant touch point.
Yeah.
Even when you think the odds of them coming are astronomically small, you invite them. Let them make the decision that they can't come from Wisconsin, but they still got the invitation. You thought of them.
Yeah. So good. And the lost art of the phone call. Can I just end on this? Pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Well, we would just pick up the phone. I'm old enough to where we did pick up the phone. We just pick up the phone. If we have the number, let's just call. They aren't going to bite us. It's amazing how we're so dependent on the texting and the digital part of it. I really feel like the phone is the lost art, which is wild.
The phone, you're absolutely right, and the handwritten note.
Handwritten note.
So few people take the time to do either one of those. They feel they have to produce something in Word, staring at a 8.5 by 11 blank sheet on their screen, and they have to fill it.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't have to communicate that way. No.
Yeah, totally agree.
And
Tony,
notes, phone call. I pick up the phone. You'll learn so much more in a good conversation with a potential donor or a donor than you will paying your prospect research consultant.
Oh my goodness, yes.
3 or 4 figures to research somebody.
And I'd also add, even if it's a family foundation, sometimes if the name foundation was on the check, we think we need to treat them like forms or banks. There's humans behind those, and some my client in California got a gift from a family foundation, and I said, "Did you pick up the phone?" "Oh no, go pick up the phone." There was a human that answered, and they had a great conversation. And a week later, I think it was a week, Another larger gift came from this individual's donor advised fund.
Wow,
We got to
that's
pick up the
fantastic.
phone.
Yeah,
Even a
yeah,
foundation,
right.
Um,
Especially for those easy moments, like thanking for a gift.
yeah,
My gosh, there's
wow.
no easier call than saying thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. You know, a birthday call, simple, simple. They're going to be bowled over, even if you end up
yeah,
leaving a message and they don't return it. They
totally.
still know that you were thinking of them on their birthday.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. Tony, I always learn things talking to you, so I appreciate you being on
Uh,
the show today.
Thank you, Sherry.
Oh
My
my
pleasure.
gosh,
Thank you for hosting me. Thank
you
you.
bet. Okay, give me all the things, how people can find you, how they can join the accelerator. Like, what do you want people to do?
The piece that you folks may be most interested in, because it's sort of it's a natural next step from our conversation, is I have a white paper on the how to launch planned giving at your nonprofit, and it's so simple to get. You just go to tony.ma, like Martignetti, tony.ma/guide,
Great.
GUIDE, and that'll take you to the launch the or the now I'm forgetting the exact name, but it teaches you how to how
It'll
to
get
launch
you
planned
there.
giving at your nonprofit. Um,
Good.
the Yes, it's got a great title. Whatever the title is,
I
when you go to
believe you.
tony.ma/guide, you'll see a white paper with a great title, and it will help you. And it's a next step toward understanding how to launch planned giving at your nonprofit.
Good.
If you want to check out the accelerator itself, that's at plannedgivingaccelerator.com.
Great. I'll make sure those are all in the show notes, including the
Thank you. Oh,
title
and
of
if you
your
want to reach
amazing
out to
paper.
me, can I also say if you want to reach out to me
Yeah.
personally, Tony@TonyMartignetti.com.
So good. And Tony's active on LinkedIn with me too. So, I always tell people go find me there first because I'm there every day. And
Yes,
you're on there with me as well. Well, good.
absolutely. Yep.
Tony, always a pleasure.
Sherry, thank you again for hosting. My
Talk to you
pleasure.
soon. Bye bye.